Well, thank you for allowing me to speak with you today, Tom. I decided to join the military in a very unique way, I believe. I graduated from Texas A&M in December of 2001, and I decided I wanted to go see the world, but it wasn't via the military at first. It was I wanted to move to Europe and live in Europe for a couple years, and so I chose Germany. And I moved to Germany, quote unquote, moved because I wasn't there very long, but I packed my bags and I moved to Germany. And when I was in Germany, I was around a new culture. I was experiencing things I'd never experienced before. I'd never been out of the country in my entire life. And I was around all that World War II history. And being all around that World War II history, I had a big weight on my shoulders of, wow, these World War II veterans really saved the world. They gave me the culture that I have in the United States. I've done nothing to earn it. And so I really felt the weight of I need to honor them and I need to earn it myself and serve in the military. So I did some research and I found a program called the College Option Program where I could join the military the same way that the World War II guys who had college educations joined. And I came back to the United States and I went into a recruiter's office and said, I'd like to join the Army and I'd like to do this program. And I went through all the process of the interviews and to join, and I joined in 2002, and I actually started in the beginning of 2003. I had to go to basic training, just like any other enlisted person has to do. And I went to basic training, and then as soon as basic training was over, I had to go to the other side of the base at Fort Benning and do the officer candidate school. And I did officer candidate school and got commissioned after the officer candidate school was completed. I learned during my officer basic course that I was going to be stationed at Fort Hood. And that was significant because this is the fall of 2003, and we are, as a country, in Iraq. We had been in Iraq since March of 2003, and Fort Hood has two huge divisions there. They're the First Cavalry Division, and they have the Fourth ID. And at the time, Fourth ID was in Iraq, and the First Cav was preparing to go to Iraq. So when I found out that I'm going to be at Fort Hood, I knew there was a 50-50 chance that I'd be going to Iraq very, very quickly. Sure enough, I finished with my officer basic course at the end of January and got to Fort Hood in February. And 3 weeks after signing in to Fort Hood, I was on a plane on my way to Kuwait to travel up to Iraq and to be deployed to Iraq for a year. I was a platoon leader, and so as soon as we got to Iraq, I started leading a platoon. And my platoon was a kind of like a hodgepodge platoon, if you will, and from a roles and responsibilities perspective. If there was an extra convoy or supply convoy or transportation mission that needed to be done, I would go take some of my guys and we would go do it. If there was a forward logistics element that needed to be set up in support of the infantry units in the battalion, I would take a group of guys and we go set a forward logistics element up, which would be like food, water, maintenance. If there was any kind of extra mission that somebody else couldn't do or they didn't have the people to do, my platoon was tapped to do that. And so it made for a very interesting deployment because it wasn't a situation where we did the same thing over and over and over again. One of the things that happened on the second time I ever was on the road doing a mission in Baghdad was a traditional ambush and also some IEDs going off. In the traditional ambush, we had, to fire back. We had about 15 insurgents attack the convoy, fired an RPG, missed my Humvee by about 3 feet. And my soldiers, fought back and, you know, we were okay. None of us got injured, which was very we were very thankful for that. Um, but it was very good. I felt that we went through that at the very beginning of the deployment because it kind of it took the edge off of like what will it be like? Will we be okay? And we had a situation where we knew how we were going to react. We knew we could get through it, and it gave us confidence going forward on our future missions that we could handle whatever came at us. I spent a year in Baghdad. I came back in 2005, and that first deployment was a life-changing experience, which I think most soldiers would say any deployment in a war environment is a life-changing experience. I think what I really uh, took away from it the most was the idea of being able to lead a large group of people, being able to get through a tough situation. This idea that you have to rely on, not only your friends, but your colleagues and the people you lead, that we are truly an army of one, to use the slogan. And it's about getting through a difficult situation together. And I came home from that deployment, and if you'd have talked to me, I would have told you I know everything there is to know about Iraq. I spent a year there. I'm a subject matter expert. And about 10 months later, when I got home from after getting home, I was given the assignment to go back to Iraq. And in that assignment, I was on an 11-man team living with the Iraqi infantry. And I can tell you, after a year with the Iraqi army, I knew nothing after that first year of Iraq. And spending a year with the Iraqi army, living with them, eating their food, going on mission with them, advising them, I can tell you that I learned more in that 1 year than the previous 10 years combined and the 10 years after combined. Like it was truly the most defining year of my life for who I am, living with the Iraqis for that year and the experiences I gained. And I'm thankful for it. It's in my DNA, but it was the hardest thing I've ever done. I think the number one thing that I learned from working with the Iraqi army was the importance of working with somebody from their perspective and their culture and their environment, because I firmly believe that one of the significant issues that the United States had in Iraq was that we were trying to put a square peg in a round hole when it came to, the mission there, especially at the beginning. I think it got better as time went on. But what I mean by that is we were trying to apply Western, American standards, techniques, ways of working, thinking to problems that were in the Middle East, problems that were in Iraq, and not trying to approach it from their perspective and their culture. And living with the Iraqi army really taught me the importance of, whenever you do anything in life, you need to, ask a lot of questions. You need to learn about that person's perspective. You can't go into a situation saying, this is how I've done it before. This is how I've been successful before. This is how I know is the right way to do it. I mean, your way is not necessarily the right way, given the environment. You have to be open to the idea of, other ways of doing things, and you have to be able to be open to other cultures, because if you're not, well, then you may just be doing that square peg in a round hole, and it can be frustrating. You can lose a lot of valuable time. You can lose a lot of valuable resources. You can, in the case of the United States and Iraq, we lost service members, we lost lives because we hadn't figured it out quite right away. And I give a lot of credit actually to General Petraeus, because he did try to approach the situation. So how do we solve this from an Iraqi cultural perspective? And you saw results happening when he took over and did that. So, and I also give a lot of credit to General Corelli because he was instrumental in trying to win hearts and minds, but from a cultural perspective, from their point of view, and get things done from their point of view. And I think that's a valuable lesson we can apply to all things. And I've tried to carry that with me throughout my life. As I was wrapping up deployment two, I got to be actually a part of something that was kind of historical actually, but kind of flew under the radar, and that is my the team that I was on, the military transition team. We took a battalion of Kurdish Iraqi army soldiers, which were all Peshmerga, and we deployed them down to Baghdad as part of the surge in 2007, which was a big significant thing from an Iraq perspective because the Peshmerga was coming into Baghdad, and that speaks to the Arab Kurdish relationship. And so we deployed them down there. We got them ready. We took them down to Baghdad, and when we were in Baghdad, that's when we transitioned with our replacements. And our replacements then were in Baghdad with those Kurdish Iraqi army soldiers. And it was one of those things where it was, as much as I was happy to be coming home after a year with the Iraqi army, it was challenging to say goodbye because I had been so invested in the Iraqi army, significantly invested in making sure that they were up to par to be able to take over the security of the country. And at the end of the day, if they can't take over the security of the country, America couldn't leave Iraq. That was the perspective that I was taking, and so I wanted to do everything I could to make sure that America was in the position to be able to leave Iraq. And if leaving Iraq was very, very important to me to be able to say I helped contribute to that. I very uniquely had the opportunity of being promoted in Iraq twice. My first deployment, I was promoted to first lieutenant in Baghdad, and I was on the roof of our building, and I got promoted the old school way, at least I was told it's the old school way, in which my company commander took a black Sharpie pen and he colored in my gold bar on the roof in Baghdad. And that was a very memorable way to get promoted. And the soldiers from my platoon were there. And it was a very, very memorable experience. It was near sundown. It was getting close to the end of the day. So it was not hot, but it wasn't super bright. It was just a nice memory. And then the second time I got promoted to captain in Iraq. I was in the year 2006. I was in the Iraqi army base outside of Mosul, in a village called Hammam al-Alil. And because I got promoted on the roof in Baghdad, I was like, I want to get promoted on the roof at the Iraqi army base as well. So I'm up on the roof of an Iraqi army base, I'm getting promoted from first lieutenant to captain. And I had actually brought my cavalry Stetson with me. So I have my Stetson, and I'm on the roof in Iraq with soldiers from the Iraqi army and members of my military transition team I was on, and the Iraqi flag flying in the background. And so it was fairly memorable there as well. So I've only been promoted twice in the military, but both times I got promoted in Iraq. So I used to joke after I got promoted to captain that in order to get promoted, I'd have to go back to Iraq and get promoted to major if I got promoted. Because I was with the Iraqi army, I brought my Stetson with me, and I would wear it in regular uniform every now and then when I was with the Iraqi army. They love that. And if you saw my Stetson today, there's still like patches of like Iraq dirt on the Stetson that is from Iraq. Um, and so not many people get to wear their Stetson in a deployed war environment uh, doing their job. I think I know that people have brought their Stetson for like ceremonial situations in Iraq, but very few people I think have worn their Stetson when they've actually been doing their job in Iraq. And I did that. I got out of the army and I moved to the Northeast and was living in Manhattan. And I had a team of folks working for me. And I think the number one thing that the military had prepared me for in the private sector was the idea of accomplishing the mission. There was no, well, we can't do this in my head. It was, let's get it done and let's get it done to a high standard and let's make a plan and execute it. And it didn't matter what the challenges we were facing. Well, we can figure it out. And I always say that like I've been in a situation where people have actively tried to kill me. I can handle anything the private sector can throw at me. And I've worked in many different industries within the private sector. And I have a very diverse background with my federal employment and my private sector employment. But the one thing that I think that is very consistent with it is I'm not afraid of change. And I think that's one of the big things that the military teaches folks is that change is a part of life. Change is good. If you don't change, you never learn anything. You want to change because if you change, you're growing. Something is becoming better. You're striving for something better by changing. And that is something that I think is very valuable in a life perspective, but also from doing your job perspective, because all companies want to get better. They want to find ways to improve. They want to find ways to, adapt to the market. They're constantly looking for that. And if you're not in the mindset of I'm a champion of change, then it's hard to be successful, I think, outside in the professional world. And I think the military really prepares you to be able to handle that change, to adapt to change, and provide value to organizations that are looking to change. So when I was living in the Iraqi army, one of the biggest takeaways that I learned was that we are all connected with the basic desires of taking care of our families and taking care of the ones we love. It doesn't matter what, religion you are. It doesn't matter what, culture you are. We're connected in a common humanity of we care about our families. And that's what motivates everybody the same. And I think one of the strengths of General Petraeus and General Corelli is they understood that piece when we were in Iraq. That it was about, hey, let's try to approach the problem of how do we help these people in Iraq take care of their families, give them a secure environment, help them be able to feed their loved ones. And so it was all about like making sure that people had jobs and people had a safe environment in order to raise their children. And when you start approaching the problem from that perspective, I think that you realize, man, one, we're all connected, and two, you start seeing results. So I'm a big believer that if you have the ability to serve in the military, that you should. You learn a tremendous amount. I would not be the person I am today had it not been for my service in the military. It set me up to be a good human being. It set me up to have a good job. It set me up to have a understanding of people and the importance that relationships play, not only in a professional setting, but in a personal setting. I think that a lot of times folks, especially probably the current generation of folks growing up, there's a certain level of maybe fear of the danger of serving in the military. Um, and I think there's also this potential idea that like war is bad. War is awful. I don't think we should ever, be in war unless we absolutely have to. But I think that you have to focus on why you serve. And I go back to why I served, and I served to honor the folks in World War II. They left their families for years. I talk about my deployments being 1 year and then I come home, and then another year and I come home. The World War II guys, they signed up and they would be gone 1942. They wouldn't be back until 1945. It'd go 3 years. And for all the things that I experienced, those World War II guys experienced way more than I've ever experienced. The danger, the death. Those guys saved the world. They had a strength that I just think that it's something that we need to honor all the time. And that idea of why did they serve? They served because for their love of country, but going back to the common humanity, they served for their families, they served for their loved ones, they served for future generations so that their loved ones and future generations could have the same, freedoms and the same, things in their culture that they had. And I think that when you focus on that's a good motivation to want to serve. To focus on earning what you've been given, because at the end of the day, all Americans are incredibly lucky. We won the lottery when it came to being born an American citizen. And we need to remember that and not take it for granted, because we could have been born in any other country, or and we wouldn't have the advantages and the life that we have. And so I think it's good to serve to be appreciative of that and be a part of maintaining that, and not only for ourselves, for our loved ones, and for the future generations of Americans. My experience is my experience. There's folks that were serving the exact same time as I did, and they have different experiences. And I think it's very important to remember that, one, every veteran has their own unique experience. Two, there's something to learn and gain from every veteran's experience. They've experienced different hardships, different successes, and they've all had lessons that they've learned from those things. I think the military that I served in is very different than the current military. I think the military that I served in is very different than the Vietnam veterans, than the World War II veterans. And I get excited to learn about what it was like to serve in World War II, get excited to what it's like about the Vietnam era, because I want to honor them, and I feel like honoring them is listening to them. And I think a lot of times a very simple and important thing you can do to honor veterans is to ask them what their story is. Ask them to tell you a little bit about what their experience in the military was. That's, to me, how you really honor a veteran, because then you're getting to learn about who they are, because that military experience is core to their being. And it shows that you care, it shows that you respect what they've done, and it shows that you're interested in them as a person. And I think that goes back to we're all connected in a common humanity, and you get to learn from everybody.